All right, I'll go ahead and kick this thing off. As some people may be signing in a little late, they can pick up the conversation. Again, my name's Bill. I'm in sales with Quorum. Thank you for everybody for joining. Also, thanks for Julia and Solantus for hosting this webinar and putting it together for us. Much appreciated for the invite. If you've been on any Quorum's webinars before, you've seen my face. We like to have these topics to address either topical things that are happening in the news or some common concerns or questions that we're hearing from the market. So if you have any future topics, we're always interested if people have some things they'd like to throw out for us to speak on in the future. Also, my partner in crime, Gabriel, is on the call with us. He's Quorum's VP of Technology, gets his roots from actually working for an MSP for several years before coming over to our team. So he has a good perspective of what IT managers and directors deal with on a day-to-day basis, and then tons of customer implementation and product experience on our side. Julia, would you like to do a little intro of yourself?
Sure, thank you. Welcome, everybody. My name is Julia. I'm from Solantus. We are a Canadian first-to-market technology provider. We offer innovative technologies and services group to provide a narrative that elevates the customer's experience and security to ensure business continuity. We deliver value through promise of technology and its benefits to grow and protect your businesses. Terry, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I'm Terry Cutler. I'm the CEO and ethical hacker here at Cyology Labs. I'm an international award-winning cybersecurity expert. My team and I get hired to legally hack into companies, help them find all the holes before the bad guys do. So with that knowledge, we help educate the general public as well as business owners on how to stay safe online.
Thank you. And just one note here, if you have any questions that come up during the webinar, feel free to chat those in. We'll feed them in as the conversation dwindles or as it's relevant. But there's a Q&A section down at the bottom where you can type any questions that you think of as they come up.
Perfect.
Great. So, Terry, I wanted to start off and ask you a question. Can you talk about ransomware impact on operational continuity, information systems, and data security?
Yeah, so for those of you that haven't experienced the ransomware attack yet, so ransomware is the largest form of online extortion that's available right now. It accounts for maybe 20% of all cybercrime worldwide, and it's a $1 trillion industry. So what happens here is that when ransomware gets into your environment, either through a vulnerability or somebody clicked on a link they weren't supposed to, it's going to encrypt all of their data, lock it all up, completely unusable. And during that time, you're going to be down for a minimum of 100 hours. And during that time, nobody can work. People are still getting paid. Then you have to bring in incident responders, law firms, breach coaches, and the bill can easily go from a simple audit that could have been prevented maybe $10,000 ago. Now it's going to hit almost $1.6 million in less than a month.
Wow.
And you've probably had some experience with, is there a real life story that maybe could share about someone's struggle or pain through a ransomware event?
Yep. So we had this poor soul took over from another IT administrator maybe 6-7 months earlier, and he was still getting his feet wet. And they have about 400 employees. They got hit with a ransomware attack, and they didn't know where any of the software licenses were or the reinstallation keys. They didn't know any of this stuff. Not only that, they went around and unplugged every single computer from the network manually, which means that when we come in as incident responders, we deploy tools that allow us to contain and extract evidence of what happened to these machines. But because every computer was unplugged, we had to go manually each one to collect the evidence. And when you get hit with a ransomware attack, the golden keys to Active Directory are usually stolen, which means if you try to just bring your environment back up, it could be reinfected. So you have to build a parallel network and rebuild the whole thing. So what was happening here is we had some very high level EDR technology that was running. And then when we're ready to plug in the switch to migrate the data over, the new data gets re-encrypted again. Like, how is that possible? Reinstall, or like reformat, restart over again, plug in the machines, plug in the network to transfer over the data, gets reinfected yet again. I'm like, how is this even possible? And long story short, we found out that the IT administrator computer that we're using didn't have the EDR tools on it. So his machine was getting infected, and because he had a map drive to the network, it was reinfecting the data on the servers. So during that time, like, this is 3 weeks have gone by now of all this back and forth. And the demand for ransom was about $800,000 Canadian. And using the ransomware negotiators, we're able to get it down to under 100 grand. So, and on top of it, their last known good backup was several months ago. And not just that, they had tape backups, which they had their more recent data on. However, the server that's used to do the restore of these tapes was hit with ransomware. And when you get hit with ransomware, it encrypts, or sorry, it kind of messes up the databases. So, which means that it had to reindex the whole tape, which could have taken weeks to do. So we had to send it off to a data recovery firm that would open up the tape and pull the information out of the cartridges itself. Yeah, so it took several weeks to get back up and running. It's a real ordeal, I'll tell you that.
For sure.
You touched on a lot of good.
We've had several companies that have been through, ransomware and that kind of pain. And, you try to tell people, you need to prep for this, you need to audit for this, you need to test for this, and it's constantly a surprise to the business when they get the ransomware on how devastating that experience really is.
And a lot of times they don't test their backup and restore processes. They think they're backing things up, but they never test the restore until it's too late.
Right, for sure. Always be testing.
Yep.
And
the other thing we noticed too is that they often have, let's say they got two network attached storage devices that are mirroring each other for the backup. Well, obviously, if one of them gets hit, it's going to mirror over the encryption to the other side.
Right.
So they don't realize that there needs to be a way that the drives are encrypted, and maybe the software has to log in to perform the backup and then disconnect afterwards.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when a hacker or somebody gets into your network, the first thing they're going to try to do is get escalated privileges, right? They're going to try to work their way up the ladder so that they can get into anything. And what we had as a customer who had all of their, he became a customer who had all of their backup software using the same password as their domain. And we're like,
oh my God.
once they have that, now they have all your backups. So they just went in and deleted it.
Yep.
So you never want that to be the case either.
Yeah.
We had another situation where they had, I think 40 something servers. Every single server was patched up. It was really rock solid, but they had one server in the environment that was that was purposely unpatched. It was used for testing purposes, for development, so they could test backward compatibility. So they knew it was vulnerable. They made it vulnerable on purpose. So when the ransomware got in, it obviously pulls out all the username and password that the system knows about from its memory, and does what's called pass the hash attack, and logs into all the other 99% of the environment, and reinfects all that too.
Yep.
Boom.
Devastating.
Well, we've seen, I think, an increase in ransomware events, and there's a couple things that are aiding that. One is the use of AI is being used for lots of things, some good and some not, but we've seen it being applied to ransomware events. Gabe, could you kind of talk about the rise of AI and how it's being used?
So when they're giving you ransomware, the first thing they need to do is get into your environment. And whether that be from coming through a network device or whatever, they need to get in. And the number one way they get in is through things like phishing. So they're sending out emails and they're wanting you to click that link. And with AI now being involved, every email is going to start looking unique. Like what people pick up on is they get 20 of the same email and it's from a different person or whatever, and they go, oh, this can't be real. But now each one's going to look unique and have its own style. I mean, you can ask an AI the same question 10 times and get 10 different answers. So they're all looking like an individual said it. So now with that kind of capability coming in with phishing, people have to be really aware of what they're reading and what they're clicking on, because I mean, I'm not going to take the ethical hacker out of you, but if I were doing it, what I would be doing is I would be leveraging AI and dumping in your LinkedIn profile and all the stuff. So it's going to look like it's your best buddy sending you that email, and you're going to click on that link. And that's where it's going to get real sketchy, is these are going to be personalized, and it's going to be spear phishing at a whole new level.
And that's where I
Yeah.
think knowing your attack surface is going to be very important. A lot of folks don't even realize that they have so much stuff exposed on the internet. So I'll give you an example. So one of the services we offer is called an attack surface report. We offer it at no charge. But basically what has happened is that there's a website known as Shodan.io. Maybe some of you on the call know this website, but this thing scans everybody and their mother online. Okay, it looks for vulnerabilities, stores it in its database. So we're able to actually go in into Shodan, pull the data out from what it knows about, because it scans you every week or every month. So the data is very current. And we can formulate a nice report for you and show you, look, here's all of your exposed remote access that you didn't know about. You have end-of-life software that's exposed. Your email security is not set up correctly. So all these things show up, and they don't realize that some of these cyber attacks could have been avoided had they had their perimeters set up properly.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like I said, the number one way they're coming in is phishing. The number two way they're coming in is a vulnerability.
Yeah.
So those vulnerabilities and people that aren't doing vulnerability scans, you're just basically saying, hey, hack me.
Yeah.
So Terry, as a lot of people are aware, there is growing concerns. Can you talk about the rise and impact of ransomware as a service?
Yeah, I mean, what's happening now is there's so many lucrative channels that cyber criminals can leverage. So a lot of people are asking, well, how on earth is this crime growing? Why aren't people being arrested? And where's these attacks coming from? So the average time, most of the time, these attacks are coming from countries that have a low monthly income. So let's say somebody over there was in a country earning $600 a month to live. Now he
Yeah.
can buy himself a ransomware kit, and now he could be earning $3,000 to $10,000 a month. And this ransomware kit comes with 24/7 tech support from the bad guys. There's a target list because so many things leaked onto the dark web. So you got people's email addresses, and their passwords that may have leaked on the web. They can leverage all these channels to go after people and have much more lucrative targets.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. Ransomware as a service basically means anybody could go buy the ability to start your own ransomware business. And it's a horrible, horrible thing. I mean, there've been, and it's not, and while you said, yeah, it's mostly low income countries, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there have been people arrested in every country that have ransomware businesses that like rent office space and hire people to just sit there and do their ransomware.
Yeah.
As if they were a legitimate business. So it is like we said at the beginning, $1 trillion industry.
And some of these folks, like some of these gangs, are earning $90 million in 4 months.
I like the word that you use, gangs, because people, they say, oh, like they're just hackers, but they're more than hackers. To me, that I feel like they're more like gang members, because now gangs, before they would, hack your, steal your money, but now it's like they're doing it through computers, and that's more scarier, because.
Well, if you actually look back, it's a good point you bring this up. So let's say you want to become a drug dealer, right? You want to become part of the cartel,
Yeah.
right? You had to go to another country to get the product. And then how are you going to get it back? You got to bring it over a boat where, it could be lost at sea. You've got law enforcement, you got helicopters chasing you. Then you got to worry about getting shot because somebody else will take over your turf. So there's so many risks involved in the physical world, where now they can just hide behind a keyboard, be on the Tor network, and just collecting cash. And the odds of you being found are very slim.
Yeah.
And most governments now are trying to get together to create a formidable attack vector to go after these ransomware people, because it is such a big thing. And so many big companies are being hit. I mean, Toronto Public Library has been down for months, right?
Yeah.
It is a mass spreading thing that's really taking everybody by storm. I mean, it's targeting municipalities, it's targeting hospitals, it's targeting people that have private personal data that they can exploit.
Yeah.
It's
I was researching, and it says nearly 1.5 million affected by data breach in Alberta Dental Service Corporation. That was last year. And I was just looking at just researching, and I couldn't believe the numbers, how high. And also I noticed that companies don't say anything because they're embarrassed. And, Terry,
It's a public relations nightmare for a company.
it
It
is.
really is.
Yeah.
Because if they can pay it and not announce it, which
Yeah.
there's laws that are trying to put in place where you have to announce it if you're publicly traded. But
Yes,
if they
absolutely.
don't announce it, they can
Yeah.
cover that up. But if they decide not to pay it and get the authorities involved and do the right thing, it takes a long time to get back up and running. And that experience is almost worse than the payment.
Yeah.
And until the governments can kind of get it together and really crack down on this, it's going to be a tough road. I mean, the numbers that we talk about are what people are admitting to.
Yeah.
But we think we only have what, 30% of what people are admitting to are actually what's
Yeah.
happening. So 75% is being hidden from you. Or 70%. That's a lot. My math is horrible right now, but
Did you see a situation that happened last year where there was a publicly traded company that tried to cover it up, and the ransomware threat actor got fed up with them and actually reported them to the SEC?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, you're not going to hide this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to throw crazy examples, but if you look at the thing that happened in Vegas, where it was MGM and Caesar both got hacked, right?
Yeah.
So Caesar paid, MGM didn't.
Yeah.
Who was better off there, right? It's a horrible experience. Like MGM or Caesar's back up and running, quick.
Yeah.
MGM took the hit, but in the long run, I think MGM will feel better about it because the next round when they come back, because most people that are hit once are hit again.
Yep.
So who are you going to go after? You're going to go after MGM that doesn't pay, or are you going to go after Caesars? And that's the problem that's out there.
Yep. So I wanted to kind of, Terry, do you know how many hospitals were hit last year in Canada? Do you have like a number?
No,
So
it was under 10, no?
Yeah, around 10. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Or, I
Right.
mean, it's just like in the news, I noticed that in the news, they covered it up, again, you're saying public, but if you want to kind of expand and talk a little bit about that.
I'll share my experience because we work a lot in healthcare, and
Yes.
we're often seeing a big problem with understaffed, undertrained employees.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it could be just regular IT guys that are now tasked with cybersecurity, but he's undertrained because a lot of folks think, oh, my IT guys have it covered. But
Yeah.
IT is like your family doctor, right? Would you ever ask your family doctor to perform laser eye surgery on you? And most people would say no. So this is where cybersecurity experts will come in and complement. But to hire cybersecurity experts full time is 6-digit minimum. And these guys, we're a cost center, right? We're here to help protect you. And, we're not working 24/7. So you need to have a managed SOC, an operations center, to come look at your system. So what we're finding is that a lot of folks are outsourcing to companies like ours that will help monitor you 24/7, but on a small business budget. So we're starting to see more outsourcing instead of hiring in-house.
Yep.
Yeah.
And whether it's everyone talks about, oh, no, we have tools that take care of that. They take care of an aspect of that. I mean, if you think about your email, so when you send an email, it comes from your brain to your keyboard, right, through your network, to your server, out to the internet, or through your firewall, out to the internet, and then right back on the other side, right back in. Every hop in that is a vulnerability path. And the person is the main one. So it's really less about the tools sometimes and more about the training. I'm not saying you don't need the tools, but you need the training just as much. And even with the SOC or a security provider monitoring your network, that training is a paramount piece that everyone needs to make sure they're doing.
You bring up a great point. So we had a company too that was dealing with we got our tools in place. So they got, a high-end SIM product, and they're just collecting logs. So when we go and do an unannounced penetration test to them or an adversarial emulation test, we can see that the IT guys are not getting the proper alerts. But then they realize when they got a data breach, they're like, oh yeah, we did get hacked. We see this in the logs, but from 6 months ago, because nobody's looking at the logs or looking at the events in real time. They're just collecting event data.
Right.
So they're just doing that for compliance, but nobody's really in there like monitoring them to see if there's an attack happening.
Wow. So what are some important things organizations can do from a cybersecurity perspective to prepare for a ransomware event? Like, what are some things you and Gabe can kind of tell the viewers, the
Okay.
attendees about that?
I mean, the biggest problem that we're seeing right now is that most companies don't have the basics in place still.
Yeah.
They have a bad patch management solution, or they don't have one at all. There's problems with awareness training, so the users don't even know how to create strong passwords. They're refusing to get MFA installed because it adds too much complexity to their lives. They need to understand why cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. They think, well, my IT guys will have it covered. Like, I don't need to care if I click on this link, several times. In fact, going back to that same example I gave you of that guy who just started out 6 months ago, there was an employee that kept clicking on the ransomware. So the ransomware got infected, then the data got reinfected, then reinfected. It was like 6 layers deep, which means the cyber criminals actually had a hard time working with us because the data was encrypted multiple times.
Yeah.
So they give us multiple keys to unlock it. Luckily, they didn't charge us 6 times, but yeah, awareness training is key to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the whole thing. Everyone sets up great rules, and they maybe have all the things, but they always have the exceptions to the rule. Oh, the CEO, he doesn't do MFA, or hey, he's not coming to training. Well, he's the guy that's going to get you infected.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot, where it's the executives that are the exceptions to all of the standard things that we would hold everyone else accountable to, that are the key linchpins. And that's why a lot of the spear phishing really targets the executives versus the regular employees.
We're dealing with a situation right now with a potentially new client where this IT company came in and said, well, all you need is a brand new firewall, managed switches, and new access points, and you're totally safe. We're like, what on earth? And they convinced upper management to go for it. And that's the mentality we're seeing with a lot of.
Were they a network security, or were they a network like product reseller? Because that's what that's.
Yeah, it was a reseller. It was a reseller.
Yeah, the reseller. It's not a security provider. Yeah.
No, and that's what we're seeing now is a lot of we'll call them gray hair executives, the old school, thinking, oh, I just need a firewall, encryption, and I'm safe. But they don't realize that hackers aren't spending time trying to hack their firewall and get detected when all they have to do is send a crafted looking email to one of the employees, have them click on a link they're not supposed to, and now they become an insider threat.
Yep.
And a lot of companies don't have the proper detection technology in place to know there's a hacker in there. And not only that, they don't have a proper response plan to get the hacker out once he's been detected. And this is something that a lot of folks don't realize, that the average time that a hacker is in your system is 286 days. That's been the norm right now. So while he's in there, he's in there siphoning out your data, trying to learn your environment as much as possible, frauding you in some way. And they don't realize that, once you do get hit with a ransom and you're able to get your data back, they may already have a copy of your data. So doing a double extortion on you, saying, if you don't pay up, we're going to leak this data.
Oh my God.
Fun times.
Yep, absolutely. And once you're infected, once you have ransomware and you're trying to go through that whole recovery process, you're going to spend the most of your time securing your environment. So being able to, you had a great term for it when we talked last time, Terry, bringing up your environment in a isolated way so that you can do all this testing and figure out what's infected and change your passwords and secure your environment. That testing lab capability is paramount. And having a recovery solution that includes that is one of the most important things you're going to have as you prepare for ransomware. Because, we all talk about if you get ransomware. It's really when you get ransomware, because it's going to happen. Yeah. You want to have an action plan to prepare. And having that testing environment is a critical piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so being able to recover to a testing environment, a clean room, as Terry says, get all that stuff together, make sure you're actually clean before you put it back into production is really the most important thing you can be doing.
Yeah. And like I say, if you've never had an audit done before, you should obviously invest in one. So this way you're going to see what vulnerabilities you have, what open doors are there. Because remember, our job as defenders is to close every single door we can. And the hackers just need one way in, and it's over.
Right. So, like we've been saying, when you're infected, it's going to happen. So you focus on closing those doors, building a recovery plan so that you know how to get back up, and then test that recovery plan as often as you humanly can. Those are really the most important things. I have so many people that come to me that their recovery plan is 4 years old and it hasn't been tested in 4 years or never tested. I mean, you always have the customers like that, but when they say they're testing, oh yeah, but it was 4 years ago. If your environment's the same as 4 years ago, I'll be surprised, because environments add servers, change servers, upgrade, add software, change software, people change in the company, training needs to change to update for the different things. So having a tested plan is super important. Making sure that your recovery solution is able to do that testing, making sure you have something that's, has all the bells and whistles of and multi-factor authentication, immutability, all of those pieces, because you're going to get through the security part and you're going to have a time where you have to spend to do your recovery, and knowing what that process is going to be paramount.
And on that note, what are other defense strategies people can put in place to kind of mitigate the risk of ransomware incidents? Training, immutable backups. What else you got, Gabe?
Oh, there's so many. Audits, security scanning services, threat mitigation software, antivirus, endpoint protection, firewalls, beyond the SIM and the monitoring tools, having a service that's actually looking at those logs. I mean, there's so many pieces to that you got to have in place. But ultimately, eventually, when all of those things happen, it's like an onion, right? You have different layers. When all those things happen, you got to have a recovery solution that's going to get you back up.
Yeah, at the very minimum, you want to have endpoint detection and response technology in place at minimum. So a lot of folks, they feel like, oh, I have free antivirus and I'm safe. The free antivirus is not going to help you.
1987.
Yeah, it's not going to help you with today's threats. Especially if you're just running antivirus itself is not going to help you, because these are signature-based technologies, which means it has to update its database every couple of hours just to stay current. And because these new ransomware variants are what's called polymorphic, it changes every couple of seconds. The antiviruses will never keep up with these things. So that's why endpoint detection and response, also known as EDR, are special softwares that runs on your computer, looks for weird behavior. So for example, let's say we're talking about fileless malware. So if you don't know what that is, basically you receive say a Word document or an Excel file, and your antivirus scans it. It's clean. Everything's good. You open up the document, and you don't have that little pop-up. You want to enable macros. Well, the moment you click on enable macro, now it's going to go out to the web, download the payload, and start executing on your computer. So when that happens, you can get hit with ransomware. But if you've got EDR installed, it'll say, hey, why is Microsoft Word trying to spawn a command prompt and do all these PowerShell scripts? That's not normal behavior. Cuts the process, possibly quarantine the computer, and the IT will receive the alert immediately.
Right.
Well,
and that's where we're behind the 8 ball. But if I'm looking into the future, that's where endpoint protection is going to start also leveraging AI technologies to start looking for those behaviors and start getting multiple scenarios where these morphing viruses can come in so that they can better react. But the reaction is always behind the action. So it's going to.
We're starting to see some AI attacks now. So it's like we have to go on the defense, where we have to make sure our AI is beating that guy's AI.
Right. Right. Crazy.
Oh my God.
AI on steroids.
I think you're totally right on, Terry, that AI and Gabe, AI used as cybersecurity management or threat detection is really key, because it's being used as the attack vector. So it's the only way to kind of match that speed and keep up with the 0-day threats, as you mentioned, because they're always changing.
Yeah.
Right.
One reoccurring thing that's come up in our conversation is just the financial impact this is having, or how lucrative an industry it is. Just stepping up on my own personal soapbox here, I would like to see, I think if we can stop the cash flow, that would really reduce the amount of cyber attacks that everybody receives on a daily basis, and how much effort we have to put into defense. So I'd like to see us move to towards a day where no ransoms are paid.
Well, actually, you bring up a great point. So a couple of years ago, I did a talk, and there's this organization called OFAC, OFAC, and they put in some sanctions saying that, you know, if you're caught paying ransom to these ransomware gangs, you can get fined. We're like, this doesn't make much sense, because now I can get in trouble for helping you, Mr. Customer, who's faced with, do I pay the ransom and get my data back, or do I close my doors because I don't have no copies left? And so that's something that's they're proposing right now, is where we can get in trouble for sanctioning a ransomware payment on behalf of a customer who's in trouble.
Yeah, I'd like to see that morph where, you know, you might have the point where you have to pay the ransomware, but I think at some point, if you haven't got the authorities involved and aren't trying to do the right thing, and they're giving you the okay, you know, there has to be some give and take there. But I think getting a central, like OFAC, or a central database where they're monitoring this activity, and they're starting to get who are the main players and how do we attack them and how do we get those keys and how do we lever, that's going to be, it's equally as important. And that's where I think that these governments that are forming this kind of compact with each other need to get to. And I think penalizing the customer for having no options isn't the way to go, but making sure that they get the authorities involved is a key thing to help us to deter this in the future.
You know, we mentioned hospitals earlier. I mean, if hospitals get hit with a ransomware attack, and obviously these guys are constantly faced with life or death situation, right? Because of the technology that's running. You know, they could be in a situation where you're going to pay $100,000 for the ransom versus paying, you know, $100,000 worth of manpower to get you back up and running a month and a half later.
Right.
So it's sometimes a lot cheaper to pay for the ransom and take the hit, and, you know, life goes on. Learn the lesson.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to see people do the right thing maybe instead of the easy thing. Again, I just think when we talk about a $1 trillion industry, people's ears perk up. I want to know what that $1 trillion industry is and how I can get involved in it. And so I think people follow the money. And so now young people looking for a career, ransomware is a viable career option because that money, right? Ransomware as a service, an entire kind of organized white collar industry is developing around it. So I think if we can really do all these great things to help defense, but like Gabe said, it's not really an if, it's a when in the current state. Yeah. So what we really need to be able to do is successfully recover from ransomware, because we're kind of saying, hey, regardless of how much defense we put in place, how much security, how much training, those things are all super important. But at the end of the day, the attacks right now are so relentless that eventually one of the balls gets by the goalkeeper, right? And so I think it's really important for companies to be able to successfully recover from ransomware.
You know, a lot of people mention that you're talking about a good topic there. People will be like, well, who's going to want to target me? I make fiberglass. Why am I a target? But they don't realize that, you know, the cyber criminals are just doing they're casting a wide net because they have access to all these hundreds of thousands of emails. They're just emailing everybody, and whoever's caught gets caught. And if they pay up, they pay up. Like, money's falling out of the sky for these guys. So
right.
Let's paint that doomsday scenario. You know, somebody has a lot of security, network, endpoint, the detection response. They've done training. They have a plan. They tested a plan. Gabe, if now we're past the if, but through the when, somebody's been affected with ransomware, what's a successful recovery from ransomware look like, or what could it look like?
Well, the process is really going to go by isolating the environment, finding out how they got in, how they were infected, cleaning that up, how far it spread, what the elevated access was, doing all of those security pieces to secure the environment again. Then it's going to be a matter of bringing up your, recovering your servers or your network in a clean room, isolated environment, applying the security fixes that you need to apply to make sure that it's clean and no longer infected, and then moving that back into production. I think those are kind of the main high level bullets, and it's that recovery piece that should be the easiest. And a lot of people really struggle with the recovery piece, whereas the security should be the hard part, and they almost skip that, and then they end up getting reinfected 3 months later.
Maybe I could tell you the flip side of that coin too, where the IT guys will come in and say, "Oh yeah, we can get you back up and running in 20 minutes, right? Because you have all these images, whatever." But if you're dealing with cyber insurance, they want to know how this occurred. They want to see a report. They want all the evidence collected. So the IT folks love to come in and start reinstalling or reimaging new machines, but they don't realize that they're destroying the evidence of the computer. Right. So now what happens is if we can't do a proper investigation, the customer would just pay the bill. The insurance companies are tired of losing $5 for every dollar they're getting in. So they're just going to say, you know what, buddy, you don't have the proper protection in place. You pay this bill. There's a $400,000 bill. Ooh.
Yep, absolutely. So having that security steps to clean your environment and then recovering your stuff is the real process you have to do once you're infected.
And is immutable backups or virtual air gap multi-factor authentication, is that all parts of a successful ransomware recovery plan as well?
Well, yeah, if you don't have immutable backups, then your backups are just as susceptible as your production network. You should have a zero trust backup solution. And what I mean is it shouldn't be part of your domain. It shouldn't be trusting to the same passwords. It should have multi-factor authentication. All those pieces need to be in your recovery solution so that once you've isolated the environment and figured out how they got in, how to clean it, you can recover. So all of those pieces are super critical to that process.
You talk about multi-factor authentication. We're starting to see more authentication bypass right now because a lot of companies still have old login methods enabled. It's like having backward compatibility. So if I show up with an old, let's say we had a situation where we can install Windows NT4, and because the newer technology has to backfail or be backward compatible with that old system, it doesn't have the capability of securing your network like it was able to. So during that time, I can get access to login methods that are vulnerable and bypass two-step verification. So you want to make sure these old login methods are disabled.
Yeah, a good example of that. You were talking to me the other day about SSL. No, you were talking to me about
SMB.
SNFs?
SMB.
Yeah, SMB and SNFs. Yeah. So SMB is backwards compatible to one, which had zero security, and people forget to turn that off. And so everything you do, they just walk right into. It's those. And again, why you need someone who is specialized in security versus just IT needs to manage that security and provide those audits and find those vulnerabilities. Because it's simple backwards compatibility that you're leaving enabled is the vector they're getting in with.
There's another option you could turn on too, for the administrators on the call. You could turn on what's called port protection. What it means is that you're going to call up your phone provider and ask them to activate port protection so no one can just transfer over your line to another carrier. So in a real life example, we had somebody on our live event where she was hacked. Even though she had two-step verification turned on all of her accounts except for one, her Hotmail, which she says, it's just junk mail. Who's going to want to check that? But when they logged into her Hotmail account, they saw all of her security questions and all the answers. And when they did that, they managed to trick her phone provider into switching from TELUS to Bell. And when he did that, all the two-step verification tokens went along to the bad guy's phone. Yeah. And they logged into her bank account and drained it, bought stuff on Amazon and eBay and drained PayPal. So, but once you have port protection turned on, you cannot just transfer your line over to another carrier without showing up in person with identification.
So that's to all our Canadians, have port protection.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And that goes beyond just your telco lines. For any of the services you have, there are those capabilities where you can limit how that service gets changed, modified, or add or deleted, to not just be your account, but maybe add a second person who has to authenticate that activity. Almost like the parental controls that you have for your home, You use that in your company so that if I go to make a change, then, you know, Terry or Bill has to okay that change before it can actually go into effect. So those are all things that a lot of providers are putting in place to help add to security like that.
Wow.
Julie, did we want to take, is there any questions that came in from the audience?
Give me a second. Yes, there's actually one. I think we kind of talked about it, but we can just kind of go over it again. What is the number one overarching cybersecurity priority that organizations should be focused on when it comes to cybersecurity right now?
I would say the first thing is, you know, you want to get an audit done. You want to find out where you are today, where you need to be, where you should be.
Yeah.
And I think that's the starting point right there.
That is a very good question, though. So I appreciate the person who sent that question out. Thank you. Bill,
And I
any
would
questions?
probably add to that you need to have user training, because like we've been saying, that's the main way they're getting in. It's the easiest way to get into a company.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to do it the same way. You'd put on a Dell shirt and walk in and say, "Hey, let me into your server room," and they just unlock the door, and you're like, "You don't even know who I am."
Yeah.
So absolutely, training is number one.
Good
If we
point.
touch on training for a second, the feedback we're starting to see now in the industry is that the content that the employees are forced to go through, they find it so dull, so boring, and they can't apply it to their usual lives, their own lives. So that's something that's been very helpful for me, because that's something I've been doing as a training consumers since 2013. So you know, if my philosophy was, if I can train these folks at home to care about cybersecurity, they can bring that knowledge back to the workforce and protect the company.
So basically saying more training for companies, for big companies then.
For sure. And a lot of companies that we're seeing, what they're doing is they're actually doing what's called gamifying their training. So instead of just putting you in a thing and walking you through slides and making it boring, they're actually attacking you. And then they're saying, "Hey, your password is this. I should never be able to find that." And once you know, I don't want to say embarrass them, but once you put them in a place where they're like, "Oh, now I understand," that the chances that it happens again go down dramatically.
See, I would be a horrible hacker. See all these things. I'd be such a horrible. Thank God.
You know, we
And
talked.
that's why, I mean, like, a lot of times, you know, these employees' passwords are leaking onto the dark web all the time, and they don't have proper dark web monitoring in place to know if you know, if their employees' password leaks. So whenever we do a dark web audit, let's say, we show them, hey, here's the CEO's email address, and there's his password. They can be like, wait a second, that's not the password to his email, but hey, that's the password to my Canada Revenue Agency login. How did they get this? Or you could be receiving an email that says, "Hey, Gabe, you don't know me, but your password is this, and I've installed malware on your computer that I have you in split screen watching an adult website. And if you don't pay me $2,900, I'm going to email this video clip to all of your
Not
content."
watching an adult website.
Right. So yeah, so people get sextorted at that point. They think, "Oh my God, they're hacked into my system. They know my password. They know everything," and they panic. But it's because they pulled off your crappy password from the dark web because you used the John 123 code instead of something wrong. So fortunately, they cracked it.
Actually, a lot of people, I know it's a lot of people, like even especially elders. Like I know this is off topic a little bit, but you know, when it comes to my mom asked me, she's like, "Oh, it says on my phone that I have to change my passwords for this website, this website, this website," and you know, as my mom's a senior, and she's like, "Oh, like I'm just gonna do an easy thing because it's easy for me to remember." So that's kind of, you know, sad. A lot. Actually, I was looking at researching that last year. A lot of seniors got hit with ransomware stuff, like, you know, I'm not going to give you your grandkids photos if you don't give me like $100,000, and that's sad, you know. So you know,
So that's something I bring up, like whenever I present to either seniors or schools or, you know, corporations, we always talk about lousy passwords. And then I show them how to create, we'll call it an unbreakable password, but by using uppercase, lowercase symbol combination. But you want to have between 16 and 25 characters long. And most people think, this guy nuts, like, how can you remember a password this long? But if you can think of song lyrics or phrases, it's going to help you. So as an example, if we take a simple phrase, "I had a great day at work, 2024 exclamation point," pretty simple phrase. But if you remove the spacing, capitalize each letter of the word, that password alone will take 10 years to break. But if you replace the O's with a 0, the A's with that symbol, that password will take 39 centuries to break. But that's until, you know, when you get your servers hacked into, and they do the what's called the pass the hash attack, and then log in as you without ever knowing what that password is. That's where the two-step verification is so important, because you need to have that second factor to identify
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. And in fact, you know, a lot of the original security experts from 20 years ago who said, oh, you need to change your password every 30 days have come back and say, yeah, we were wrong. Don't do that. Get a really secure password and just keep it forever, is a much better way to do it. And so, because when you have to change it every 30 days, people were going, oh, it's password 1, password 2, password,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, everyone knows. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be like that. It should be a you know, he used the thing like song lyrics or whatever, a phrase, sentences, leave the spaces in. If that's how
Yeah.
you think it, leave it. But
Yeah.
secure it and make it long. Don't
Yep.
be afraid of a long password. If
Yeah.
it's something you know and you're going to always remember, you know, maybe it's something that you can call up at any point in time. But make each account you have a unique phrase or password.
Yeah.
Just don't use the same one everywhere, but once you set it, you don't need to change it.
One of the
And
comments that always comes up is, well, can I use a password manager? It's going to create me 48 characters long, and that's completely unbreakable. But my feedback or my worry has always been like, well, if that password manager software ever got hacked, how would you remember what your passwords are? And sure enough, when was it, a year or two ago, LastPass had a situation.
Yep.
And I had a first customer call me up. It says, I have 900 passwords that have leaked. How can I control this? Like, I don't even know where to start with this. Like, so you're on your own, because he couldn't control the passwords to log into his accounts. Like, how can you? So,
And almost everywhere has multi-factor authentication capabilities now, almost everywhere.
Yeah.
And so if you have online passwords and you're doing things, use Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator, or get one set up, whichever one you find that you like, and start doing multi-factor authentication everywhere.
It's good. Yeah. Good advice.
And seeing a lot of sophistication around that, you know, with having a really good password. And Julia brought up a great example of getting a suspicious prompt to reset your password. We need to be really aware of that. If anything seems suspicious about someone asking you to take actions to your account, just make verify, right? To talk about the MGM Caesars of Palace attack that Gabe had mentioned earlier, that started off as a social, right, engineering that they got in there, where they were calling in and pretending to be a user in the company and asking to have their password reset. So not only does our software need to be zero trust, but we also kind of need to be zero trust from as a user if we're getting prompts to reset our password, and also as an administrator if we're having requests to change a password, just verifying the identity of the person asking to take that action.
I think we're also adding in a lot more complexity too, right? Because we're now adding in IoT devices. So going back to your casino, you guys heard about what happened a couple of years ago with, I can't remember if it was Caesar's Palace. I can't remember who it was, but they have obviously top-notch cybersecurity. But what happened was they got this glorified fish tank, and they brought in this water sensor. And what happened was they were able to hack in through the water sensor and then get access to the network. So just by having a device like that was able to compromise their whole security.
Yeah, and I've had many customers that came back to me and said they got into our network through our printer.
Yep.
Or through our UPS battery.
Yep.
Because they never, you know, they plugged in the UPS and thought, oh, it's just a battery, but they never set up the password, so it was the default, and that's how they're on your network.
Actually, good point about the default passwords. I come across this all the time whenever we do intrusion tests. So if you have say a router, but people are like, but I changed the administrator password on the web console. Yeah, but you forgot to change it for Telnet and SSH.
Right.
And we got in that way through default admin credentials. You need to make sure all of your passwords are changed. And that's why these penetration tests are so important, because we find all these misconfigurations and such.
And I'll say it, I said it before, I'll say it again. Make sure your recovery solution doesn't use the same password as you use in production.
Happens a lot.
Yes, 100%.
It doesn't share with your domain. It's not using single sign-on. Your storage for your backup solution is not on your network. Like, I can't stress that enough. It should be able to function if everything else in your network is gone. So don't trust anything in your network, because that's what's going to break. That's why you need it.
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, we're talking about all these kind of scary things, right? And that the attacks are persistent. They don't never stop, and they're very creative, right? They're always coming up with new ways that we haven't thought about of how to prevent. So for me, while security and training preparation is really, really important, right now we really need to be able to recover from a ransomware event as well. So just make sure that we're not a sitting duck and forced to pay a ransom, and that's our only way out. Having a secure backup, doing all the things Gabe just mentioned, is really your backup plan, right? When people get through security or an end user makes a mistake, which is almost inevitable in today's time.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we're have a quiet group this time. Not too many more questions. If anybody thinks of one, we got a couple more minutes, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank Julie and Solantus for putting together this webinar and asking us to co-host with them. I thought it was really valuable.
Thank you.
Gabriel, thanks for leading us through a really productive conversation as well.
Yeah, Terry, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, honestly, Terry, thank you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And, thank you, Quorum. Thank you, Bill and Gabe, for doing this with me as well. I really appreciate it. Actually, I learned I learned a lot. I can't believe there's things out there that people can hack through. And, this was a very informative, and I hope that our Canadian audience does listen. And, we're not trying to scare you, we're just trying to educate you and create awareness. That's what we do. And, I hope that, the panelists did get some info as well. And, I appreciate you guys doing this with me. And yeah.
Maybe I can do is I can throw in a little gift to your the attendees. If they want an audit done for their external attack surface, maybe they can just reach out to you and say, I want my free audit, and we'll get it done for you.
That's great. Thanks for the offer. I think Julie is going to be following up with all the people who participated. So if you're interested in that, or learning more about Quorum's disaster and ransomware recovery solution, or if you just thought of some questions that you didn't ask on the webinar, we'll be following up with you in calls and emails just to connect with you and get your feedback and any questions you may have.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Perfect.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.